Hello and welcome back. This is Sherry with Heart and Soulful back in the studio today with a fun video. So I'm doing some experimenting and I'm actually going to do this video maybe a little bit backwards because I have done an experiment, but I haven't even revealed it to myself yet to see if it works. So I'm going to show you kind of what I started with, some ideas, and then we're going to unveil my experiment, and then I'll show you how I did it. So I'll maybe be able to see then what worked and what didn't work. So if you're just joining me for the very first time, welcome. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you do, please give me a thumbs up. Click on subscribe if you haven't already. And if you click the little bell, you'll get a notification when I post a new video. So I've been working for the last week or so, creating some journals using really old falling apart book covers and my grungy papers. And these are the original papers. I've scanned them and I still don't have a kit yet, but I've scanned the ones that I really liked so that I can maybe put a kit together for those of you who don't want to create your own grungy papers. But they're just a lot of fun. I think they're great backgrounds for journaling. And so I decided to try some new things that I haven't already tried. And then also, if I want to do collage and different things in these journals, I like to use some different papers for that. So today's going to be all about making some grungy papers, some different things. So I'm going to show you what I did yesterday. If you have not watched those previous videos, I'll go ahead and put a link down below because they're kind of some of my most recent ones, and they cover this whole using my grungy papers. So I had created some and put stencils on them. And I really like how they turn out because they're just kind of a fun background too. So these were a couple more that I tried. Just stencils that I have made myself. These are my own. And I do have videos on how to make your own stencils. I use a Cricut maker to make mine, but you can use any cutting machine, you know, if you know how to work their program. But I have shown you in my 2 series of videos how to make just different designs, using different software and that sort of thing. So I'll try to remember to put a link to that also down below. So just some with stencils, and just with just some random thing. I did some, if you watched the last video, I like tea bag paper. It comes, at least the ones that I purchased were in 16 by 16 sheets. And they're a nice weight to do kind of a faux washi tape. And so this is what I use to kind of bridge the gap in between my folios in my journals. And these are also really good for collage. You can stamp on them, do all kinds of things. So I did a whole batch of those, but I did some more. And then this was, if you watched several videos ago, I've been using this tracing paper that I had tea stained, and then I attached cheesecloth to it. And I do have that in a video. I'll try to put a link to that, but it's super easy. There's a product that I have. It's this spray and bond fusible adhesive. It's a permanent bond. And I covered this in a previous video, but it's super easy. So I just took a piece of tracing paper. It was a piece that I had already tea stained. And then I just took the cheese, sprayed this on one side, laid the cheesecloth out, and then you iron it. And that is what creates the bond. So when you first lay it out, you have not adhered it yet. You have to go over it with your iron. You can do that from the back side if you want. If that's easier, because you know there is going to be adhesive in between these, you know, the mesh of your cheesecloth. So this particular piece I wanted to show though, because I wanted to test if I could do it in the same way that I've been doing my grungy papers after I had the cheesecloth on the tea bag paper or on the tracing paper, if it would stay bonded together, and it did. So that is just another way to make even this paper grungier. So I did a piece of that, so I will be making some more of that, and I'll put a link down below for this product. And then what else did I do? I did more. I did a whole batch. I think these were a previous batch of rice paper that I had done. And someone recently messaged me that the link for the rice paper that I had purchased is no longer available, and it's correct. So I grabbed another brand that I had. So I will put that link down below. This one, actually, I think I have 2 different ones here. I can feel this one's even thinner. And I don't remember what brand this is, but I don't like it as much. It's thinner. it's pretty fragile, as you can see. So I will put a link though down below for this one, and it comes in different size pads. The one that I have, it's this Yasutomo sketch paper, and I really like it. It's probably in between. It's a little lighter weight than this one, but it's a nice weight for collage. And I don't think it doesn't have what the weight is on this, but it comes in different sizes. I purchased the 12 by 18 sheets because at the time that's all they had available, and that way you can cut them in half, and then they're 9 by 12. So I'll put a link for that. And so that's what this is, and it's a nice weight. And so I did these. One tip I have to mention is if you're going to do rice paper, you cannot try to move it along by finishing off drying with your iron. It'll stick to your iron because of the gluten probably in the rice. So you do have to let these dry naturally completely before you iron them. And then once they're dry, you can iron them. So these I did stacked. And the other thing is when these are stacked, because it's rice paper, while it's wet, it's fragile. So you can't take them apart and dry them individually once you've dyed them stacked. So you need to let them dry completely stacked as well. So these were an experiment that I like how grungy they are, but it didn't work exactly as I intended. I thought I would try doing it like I do my rusty fabrics and lay some rusty objects and metal objects on top and see if it would work like the stencil did. I think if I would have completely let them dry with those on there, then they would have maybe imprinted better. But I was in a hurry, and so I had skeleton keys all over this one, and I removed them before the paper was completely dry because I wanted to try to separate the papers. I was able to when they were almost dry, but you're better off to just be patient, let them dry overnight. This one I did try also with using the stencils because rice paper is just a completely different thing. It works, but much more subtle. So I don't know if you could even kind of see the pattern. The same with the way that all of the materials, inks and things that I'm using, you can see they have kind of a cloudy effect. Rice paper just takes all of the products differently than regular paper. So this one came out pretty good though. I let this one dry. I think probably the other one might have been like a second underlayer. So it went through maybe 2 layers of paper. So that came out pretty good. But you can see how everything kind of bleeds together, more watercolor looking. Even the way that the splatters kind of bleed out. I did notice that with rice paper, things like the India ink splatters that I used diluted India ink, and everything absorbs so fast into the rice paper that you don't get that movement and spreading and different things like that. It just kind of absorbs into the paper. So that's the difference, but they're very pretty. And I still like how grungy they look, and I do like to collage with this, so I'll get some interesting things maybe. This was another experiment that I tried. I set a whole bunch of different size wood spools on top to see if I could get a circular pattern. And again, it didn't imprint as much as I would have liked, but I also removed them before the paper was completely dry. So maybe if I wasn't so impatient and left them longer, I would have had better circles. So I might try that again because it wasn't too bad. But now I do have quite a bit of rice paper done, and a lot of them are kind of similar. So I may end up adding other things to these to kind of grunge them up a little more so that I don't have so many that are similar. And again, this was the rice paper that's a little heavier, and it has a much more slick side to it than the other one. So that may have helped for it to kind of hold its patterns a little bit better. Like this one held its pattern quite a bit. So that was my rice paper experiment. And then the fun one here, I have a whole pile, but I have not taken them apart yet. So I'm gonna grab my June Taylor cut and press that is my messy ironing board and grab my iron because I'm gonna kind of do these as we go so you can see how this works out. So my idea was, because I want to use a lot of different things and different materials that I can collage, I thought, what if I try just collaging them sort of onto a piece of plain paper. So this is sort of like my base. That way I can pick the stack up easily and go and move it to where I need it to dry. So on all of these, I started with just a piece of plain copy paper, and I think this one is like 20 pound, maybe 28 pound, but just the cheapest copy paper, thinner, because I was trying to find some things that are thinner than the Hammer Mill 32 pound that I used for the folios. So I grabbed some different things. I've already taken a couple pieces off, and that's when I decided I needed to just do this on camera so that you can see in real time what this is like, because I have not tried this before. So this was a piece of German book page. And let's see if I have the original. So this one started out looking like this. So you can kind of see the difference. It was already old, but it wasn't as grungy as I wanted. So I wanted to try a piece of that. And it's brittle, and I don't mind that because it's going to be for collage. So I like how it turned out. But what I did was I started, maybe let me pull some things off of this and show you. This is all still stuck down. I started with my just plain piece of copy paper, and this is some cheesecloth scraps that were still stuck down. I keep a little drawer right in front of me here where I put little scraps of things. That way I have little ties to put onto tags or, you know, to collage with. So this was just a piece of cheesecloth, and I decided I'm just going to kind of lay it down here messy so that it can get some of the inks and end up super grungy. So I love that. That can go back in my drawer. And then I had laid down, there's probably a little bit of salt and things on this. I had laid down this little piece of lace that was also in my drawer that was just white to begin with, so that I laid down. And then I put this book page over. Now, before I did that, I should say, I did some spritzing and some things. I'll do one on camera at the end so you can see exactly what I did. But I just kind of put some of my liquids and spots and things on it. And then I started laying down a couple of things, and I grabbed a doily and laid a doily down, and you can see how grungy that is from having that cheesecloth underneath. And that was, some of it got kind of torn off here. It was a little almost glued down, that. And then I had this little guest check, which is just a new thing, you know, a pad of guest checks. You can buy those anywhere. And so I laid it down, and then I laid down a stencil, and I think I laid down more than one, and they didn't all come out so well. So I think this one was this large one, probably a stencil. And then I think I may have laid down, you know, one here. It looks like there, maybe. You can kind of see the pattern, and I'll show you up closer, but you can kind of see that stencil pattern came through a little bit. So I put that down, and then I think I must have put this one up here somewhere. So just once you have all of your liquids on in the layers that you wanted, I throw down stencils at the end and kind of flatten them out and then let things dry. So I'm going to just kind of, with my iron, get these flattened out. Now I hesitate to tell you how I dried these because it's not something anyone's going to have probably. You kind of need to get creative about how you dry these because they're stacked. They're going to take a while. So I have been drying things by putting some opened up garbage bags, plastic, on my floor in my studio. And that works, but you really kind of need to do it overnight. Depending on how much liquid and things you have this layer of plastic underneath, and all the liquid is kind of just sitting there. So it really takes a long time to dry if you don't have any circulation underneath or heat. My floors are normally heated in here, and so that's why I use my floor, because it warms things up from below. Our boiler went out, so my floor is no longer heated, and so this was taking a long time to dry. I just did this today, and I didn't want to let it go overnight. So I have a dryer in my laundry room that came with the house that is like a sweater dryer where I have shelves that are screened. That way the air circulates around everything. So you might in your dryer have an attachment. Some dryers come with those where it attaches to the inside of your dryer door or something, or inside, so that you can lay sweaters. That works great because the air is circulating. Because you're using stencils and other things that you'll see that I'm using, I wouldn't put these in the oven. The only way you could do that is if you warmed up your oven, really low temperature, like, 200 and however low, the lowest setting it will go. And then heat it up and then turn it off and then put your items in there. I would not have the oven on because it's gonna melt all your plastic. So I would not recommend that, and I have not tried that. So I'm just letting you know. So if there's a way that you have some kind of screen shelving where air can get underneath, then, that would work great. But I don't know if anyone has that. You're just going to have to get creative. You can do these outside if it's not windy, but just know that having a stack of papers with these other materials inside, you can't just put them in your oven. You're going to just have to be patient and let them dry overnight. But this is how the grungy one came out, and I just love that. So it has some texture. I had put some salt down too. But now I have this grungy paper that I can just use sections of for collage. And then I have all these other little grungy bits. So I have more to show you. This is one that was just from an Italian book, an old book page. And if you watched in the previous videos, I had mentioned when I just, did my treatment and then laid the stencils on top and let them dry. That's what I did with this one. I did a single layer, so it didn't take so very long to dry. But now I have this book page that's stenciled. You can also do the reverse. I did some of those pages where I just stenciled on plain paper. I could then run that through my printer and print, like I have an Italian ephemera kit in my Etsy shop. You could take some of that Italian ephemera and print on the copy paper that has been grungy and stenciled. So this is kind of the reverse of it. I just did the stencil on the book page. And so the backside is even nice. So that was another little experiment. This is another one with some stencils and some cheesecloth. So this one, again, I used a base of just cheap copy paper and then added a stencil, and I added some cheesecloth. I may reuse this one again because there's still a lot of white. I could actually try to get this stretched out better and lay it out flat on something. So I may redo that one. And then another stencil that's little gears. And I did that one because this page, this is some kitchen twine, and I just got it all in my little dye bath and then took them apart and then just laid them out. And that actually came out really nice. So this is another book page, and this is brand new white book page. I have a couple of books that are vintage clothing, but they're new books. And so I had taken some pages from that and just torn a piece and laid it onto, this was copy paper. So that was a layer. And then this was a piece of, looks like a law book. And so that's really dark because I had treated this paper dark first. So, and another doily. So this was, again, a piece of copy paper. And I do these in a cookie tray. You're going to watch me do it at the end. But when I did that, I laid it out to dry initially on that garbage bag. And so I got any wrinkles that were in my garbage bag transferred to the back of this. Then I moved it into my dryer, which is like a window screen. And you can see then the screen pattern transferred because it was still wet. So I love that. And then on my first page, I had sprayed some metallic, if you can see that. And these just little pools, I think, were where my paper wasn't laying flat. And then you can actually see a pretty good, it almost looks like a photo, if you can see that. Let's see if I can get in there. It almost looks like a photo transfer, but that is just from that doily laying on that paper. And then the same with the string. So that transferred really well. And then this was a stencil. So just super fun. And you can see when you layer things on top of each other, you can see where one paper was and then the stencil, and then you can see actually a little bit of the gear there. So it's kind of like collaging before you create your actual piece of paper. So those were a lot of fun. If any of these turned out great, I may scan these too, because that would be a fun kit. So there was that one. My doily, you can see, has some string that was there. And that actually stayed nice and flat in my book page. And I like how it has the stencil just came through on the edge. And this one with the gears, I really like that. I'm not a very good stenciler, you know, to do the little hole pouncing thing. So I use them more for stuff like this, for my gel plate or for, you know, transferring things. So that's fun. So these were the two stencils I used for that. And then this one, this was a stencil. This is from Sean Petit, just a alphabet stencil, old type text large stencil. Oh, and that came out great. So this one, if I can get that apart. So this one was a dictionary page, and it even kind of soaked through the back. But that's a lot of fun. And then this is a Tim Holtz stencil. And I layered that, and then also the alphabet one was also on part of it. And this is the back side of one of those guest checks. But you can see, because when you do the layers, you add things to each layer. So you do get interest on both sides, because it transfers up whatever was below it. But that's a cute little already kind of collaged guest check. And then this, I think, came out of, the two journals that I did yesterday in the last video, the Ray's Arithmetic. These are some of the book pages from that. So you can kind of see where one stencil kind of transferred through. You see where another page was sort of overlaying it, and then just the different inks and things that were on. So I could always add more to this if I wanted to, but even just to collage that, you know, and then add in your actual art piece. And another doily. Now this one didn't transfer very well onto that paper. And then another book page, just from a little French book. And again, it doesn't have much stenciling on it, but that one transferred through a little bit of it. And then this was my piece of paper. So the back side has the screen that you can see through, and then just all the wrinkles and bubbles that were under I had a little bit of salt I had put on this one. But that's kind of an interesting color. When you do these and you move your tray around, your colors just get sort of mixed in. I'll show you what colors I used, and you'll be kind of surprised. But this one has a lot of little purple undertones to it. Those are a lot of fun. I'm trying to do some for these collage papers, different colors, and some maybe darker things, just so I have some variety. Because if you've watched the journal pages that I put in the books, have some things going on, but I wanted some different things to add to that, just so it's not same on top of what's under there. So this is just a piece of binding lace. I have a whole bolt of this, and so I'm constantly doing different techniques to make it grungy, because I use this a lot in my journals. So I have a piece of that I'll have. And then another stencil, Tim Holtz stencil. And then this is, if I have a video out there, maybe a couple, where I made little stencil sort of things out of a hot glue gun. And so I have just a bunch of different shapes that I can lay on things for it to imprint. So I wasn't sure how this would do. It wasn't laying nice and flat originally, but I do see my little outline there. So this is the other half of that watch piece of paper. And so it's just now grungy. I still feel a little bit of dampness in here, but you can see where the lace was. It's amazing how in certain little sections, it almost looks like a photograph. So that's interesting. And then the stencil. So let me iron this one out. But I think I'm gonna like doing this. This is a lot of fun. Just, you never know what you're gonna get. And I like the idea of stacking up a whole bunch of things and then putting it away overnight and coming back the next day, and it's like Christmas morning. So here's another layer. Was a large dictionary page. I have some on my stencil. I have some on my lace. It really almost looks like a photograph. This is some of the hot glue thing that was laying there. And I added a little more color to this one. Oh, and this one you can see, this is the back side of it. I had a music stencil laying in the next layer. I wasn't sure how that would work. And I have a different stencil, I think. No, that's the same one. So this one you see through. This one is coming from underneath. And then this is another different German book page. Some of these, it's just amazing. I did have somebody comment this to me too, and I think it's probably a good idea, is some of the techniques I do, it actually can look like mold or, you know, like that, looking like mold on the page. It's really not. This one was not like this at all. It was the other half of this. So, but it's not moldy at all. So it's just amazing how you can really make it look grungy, like it's been in an attic forever. So this was the music stencil I put down on this. Oh, and that's where the stripe came from. I had laid down this little piece of fabric, and again, that was not there. This was just a white piece of fabric. So I really like this. You know me, I love grungy things. So if you've never, you don't have a collection, you can create this grungy stuff from brand new things. So there was another piece of paper that I laid down. Again, just to get that old look. And a lot of that is because when you have something that's already wet and then you're laying something dry on top of it, you get little bubbles and pools there, and you just leave them. Don't flatten everything out, and they'll stay there and they'll transfer up. So this actually was a piece of lined binder paper. And then all of those layers, this was just my plain piece of copy paper. Again, I have the screen from my dryer and then the wrinkles from the trash bags. So I probably let them, I would say, I mean, there was no dripping water or anything like that when I moved them. They were dry enough to easily handle and move. All of the liquids had already soaked into everything. So they were, I would say, maybe halfway dry, or not quite halfway dry, before I moved them. Just a lot of fun, different color and texture and layer. I don't know if you can see that very well, but there's actually a screen on all of this. And then again, I used my salt in different spots, so you get a little extra texture here or there. And then this is the last one, and we'll do some. So this is, again, just using my hot glue gun. I make these little stencil-y things, and they have paint on them because it was just clear hot glue, but I've used them on my gel plate and things, so just as like little texture things. So that's why they're colorful, but it was just clear hot glue. So that created some nice little squiggly lines. And this is just, these are just, I don't think I did put some lace in that one. So this is, again, a law book, a vintage law book. And then another little French book. Just a lot of fun. And then this is this was the little German book that was much lighter, you can tell. But this was like a perfectly new looking piece of paper. And then just layering it, you get through some of the swirly stencil and some splatters. And then I had added another piece of lace. And this one I think had a little bit of salt on it. These are, even though this is lighter weight copy paper, these are also thick enough that you could use these in a folio, you know, as a journal page too. But then they're thin enough I can collage with them as well. But you can just kind of see that transfer of the lace. So you could always do it in an intentional stripe pattern and do it neat and tidy, and that would be a really pretty thing to do too. Doilies will work. I have some coins I want to try. In fact, maybe I'll do a couple of samples and I'll lace some of my, I think if I have them here, some trade coins on those. So let me grip my tray. Okay, since we're working backwards, if you have not watched any of these videos where I've been doing this technique, I'll go over the materials quickly. So you want a cookie tray to protect your surface. This is what we're going to work in, and then we'll use this to transfer our piles onto a place to dry, wherever that works out to be for you. So I'm going to grab some paper. So I'm going to start again. My base is just going to be a piece of paper. In this one, I have just some coffee water. I use the cheapest instant coffee. You can make it as strong or as weak as you like. I keep that one pretty weak because I just keep adding water to it because I do have some coffee and some other things. But I use this just instant coffee because you want it to dissolve. So instead of having to brew the coffee. So I start with just spritzing my page just so it'll all stick down. And then I'm going to flip it over so that is under. Now, if I had everything's kind of dried here, but you can see I have kind of some ink and things still there. Anything in my tray is going to, you know, be transferred to the bottom of this piece of paper. So once you've done a few of these, you end up with a lot of liquid in your tray. So you do get some interesting backsides on that first piece because you have a lot of liquid going on. And then I'm going to use a couple of this is my cleaning water, which is very dirty. I can actually use this now because there's so much stuff in it. But I just use these little brushes to splatter. So you can just start, you've got coffee, a weak coffee down there now, or it could be tea. And then I just start splattering things. So I have in my little cups, this is some tea. Because I have not always been good about cleaning my brush, all the colors are kind of blending together, which is fine because I'm just trying to go for grungy things. This is just a little pipette, and those are fun to just be able to, you know, make some different patterns on. It doesn't really matter what it's going to look like because everything is going to get so soaked into each other that, you know, in the end you end up with just kind of random. So this is a little cup with some Delusions, and this is turquoise, I think, vibrant turquoise, and I dilute it a little bit with water. Now, if you watch the previous videos, I kind of got to thinking about this. I was putting some glycerin and I just did a little squirt into each of these cups, but I really only, to me, I think I only really need this in all the acidic things, the coffee, the tea, that sort of thing, because I like them to react to each other. But this helped keep my paper from being too dried out and brittle. For the collage things, I don't mind so much, but when I was doing the folios, I want those to be able to crease and fold without breaking. So I was putting glycerin in all the cups. So you don't really, for this one, you don't really need to do that because this is just some ink. So you're gonna squirt some of that out. And I'm just going to put a bunch of different things so you can see all the different cups I have. But you can kind of see how they'll kind of spread out and, you know, make some interesting patterns. Now, if you were doing one of the other papers, that you might like how that looks just like that and want to transfer that. But we're going to layer it up today, okay? So the next cup that I have, I made some indigo because I just love that color. So for me, you can make indigo out of really any kind of dark blue. This is another Delusion ink spray, and this one is actually periwinkle blue. I put a little bit of that and then a little bit of Black India ink and mixed that, and that gave me this really pretty kind of indigo color. So you can splatter some of that around. And then you can see I haven't been cleaning this brush in between. You can, but I'm just being lazy. So this is some coffee that you can see it's sort of starting to get a greenish tint. It's because I've been putting this blue brush in there. But I like that because I like those natural kind of colors. And then I have a tea one, and this is actually a darker coffee. And it's because my cups are just getting really down to I've been doing this for days. I need to add a little water. So a couple of different strengths of coffee, some tea, a couple of dyes that are diluted. And then this is the Black India ink. And I dilute this too. Depending on how dark you want your spots, you can dilute it more and it'll be more gray. So that's when I actually even go to my cleaning water and spritz that around. Okay, so that's those. Then the other thing that I have is I should be wearing gloves. You can take some of that instant coffee, and that kind of gives you those little rusty looking spots, and just, sprinkle that on. Then to get the texture, I use this is coarse kosher salt. A little of that. You can just use regular iodized salt. This is just the regular fine salt. That will make more fine texture. We're kind of putting everything in this one. And then some lemon juice. I'll show you what it'll do just right out of this little lemon. You can use real lemon juice, but it's the acidity in it. So I keep a little cup. This looks a little gray because I haven't cleaned my brush, but you can take this and splatter it. And let me see if I hold my tray up, you can see that. You'll get little white dots where it's resisting. Now again, because we're gonna layer this is what I do to get all those techniques for the papers that were in the folios. We're layering this so much that it's really just gonna all get mixed up together. So I'm just showing you the things that I've been using to show you how they work. So you see how it kind of made everything spread out a little bit. So you can use it or not for what we're doing. It doesn't hold its pattern, is my point, I guess. And then one of the other things that I was using, because I was looking for more sprinkle things, you can use spices. You might have turmeric has a color, saffron has a color, paprika has a color, that sort of thing. Or I had these Finnabar little pigments. And so you can actually sprinkle just some powder pigments if you have that. And maybe even some soft pastel, you can shave a little bit of that on too. I haven't tried that, but that might work. Just something that you can get a little color. So if I wet that, and then if you want to mix them up a little bit, you move your tray around. If you don't, like I said, it's gonna all kind of get absorbed in there, but that just kind of is your grungy base. And then just start layering some things in here. So I'm just gonna grab, maybe before that I'll grab, I liked how that string looked. So let's see. This is some bookbinding thread that was left over, but that'll just kind of create a little pattern under there. And then maybe another piece of lace. And again, you're going to be touching a lot of this, so you might want to wear gloves. I did when I was working on those other ones, because otherwise my fingers are going to be really inky. And then let's see, I want a piece of this lace. And like I said, it might be kind of fun to intentionally do something kind of straight, because that way you can trim, cut that off as a border or something. So maybe a little that you can add. I added salt already, so let's just put down a piece of paper. You could put a stencil down now if you wanted to, so that it would kind of transfer. Let's maybe grab this music one and put it there. And that, because it's on a first layer, it'll probably go through right to the back. So I think this one, I'm gonna wet all of this, and then I can lay this out. And then maybe I wanna do some more color here. let's do a big doily. And by laying this out, I should get some of that music to transfer onto this doily. So you just want that down. So I have music going there. Maybe I add a piece of music paper. And that looks really interesting there, if you can see that. I know I have a glare, sorry. So any point that you get to where you like it, you can stop, because that looks pretty interesting just like that. And I don't know how well that will dry like that, but that might be kind of fun. So I'm gonna transfer this one and we'll come back and do another one. Okay. So you can see I have some liquid in there that will transfer, but I'm gonna wet this and then flip it. Works better. Okay, and then again, you're just gonna add some different colors. And then this is an old piece of ledger, so maybe I'll add that. So really you can see there's kind of no rhyme or reason. It's just kind of nice to have a little variety. I haven't used any map yet either. Let's just do a piece of map. And some coffee maybe. I have this big stencil. That might be kind of fun to do the circles. So let's just do the whole thing. So you can see how this is kind of bubbled up. If I leave that, it's going to leave that color void there, which is kind of nice. So then maybe I want, this one's kind of nice too. That's not going to show up very much. I'll do another piece of book page up here. And then I want to put a lot of color, I think, on this piece, because I want to put a stencil down. So let me, I want a lot of liquid on that. And let's see, I'm running low on color here. And then I'll put this down, but maybe do it here, and I can get it through that big circle. And then maybe if I put this, oh, this is the same one. This one, I think I'm going to try to put coins on, and we'll see if I get lucky and have anything transfer. So I want to kind of make sure all the things underneath are kind of pressed in a little bit, and then get some color on this. This one. Okay, let me see. I didn't find my coins, but I did find these gears. So I'm gonna drop some just to see. They need to be flat. Like this one is not, it has a little raised part, it won't work as well. This one I don't want to use because it has a necklace thing on it. This will work. Now these gears, if anyone wants to know where I got those, I will have to try to find a link. They were new. They were probably made in China, but they were shiny and new, and I used my grunging technique and aged them. So that's kind of fun though, because I think this will work. Just use flat ones. And then I also have some keys. These are not the same ones that I did before, but I'm gonna see if I can be patient. They're nice and flat. The other ones were not this flat. These are more like safety deposit box keys. So they lay nice and flat. So I think they'll work better. Which is kind of fun on the ledger, huh? Some safety deposit box keys. Okay, I think that's it. I'm gonna leave this, and hopefully I'll be patient enough to let it dry overnight. And then I will, maybe before I end this video, I'll come back and show you what the results of this experiment were, and that way you can see ones from actual start to finish. So I'll be back. Okay, I'm back with my dried 2 piles that I did on camera. I did do them in my dryer, so we're gonna find out if that worked, or if it's probably better to dry them and not be rushed, but we're gonna see if these keys worked. And I do see imprints, so I think the longer they sit there, forced drying things maybe is not as good, but I mean, I think it worked okay. So I'll put these back. So I'm thinking maybe next I'll do a batch that I leave out on the floor and let dry naturally, and that way I can see if that works better. I have a feeling it will, because it lets it lets the paper dry slower and everything's soaked there. Those things are sitting there. When you force dry it, you can see the papers get a little curled up and things, and I don't think they would do that if I let them take their time. So let's just pull some of this off and see what we have. So they transferred some. Like I said, I think they'll do better if I don't. And you can see a void where I didn't have enough liquid. So getting everything sprayed down, at least moist, you saw me doing that. It just helps the paper to absorb it evenly and you don't get these big white spots, but you might like that. Anyway, so that's a dictionary page. And then I had added my cheesecloth scraps, and so those are a little grungier. I like that better. And then this one stencil with the dots showed up a little bit. And that one. And a little bit of map. You can see the stencil through there. Oh, and then I had this piece of ledger. So it has some keys and some of the stencil. And then my plain piece with the screen on the back from the dryer. But you could even see some of the gears through there. And then this one. A piece of very grungy music. Doily, and you can see some of the music stencil came through. And my lace and the other lace. And then this one you can see the lace through the string, another little thread of some kind, and then lace here. Oh, there's another piece. So just some fun grungy papers. You never know what you're gonna get when you layer it that way, but I like, because I want to tear these up for collage, it's nice to have a lot of variety. And again, you could just fold this in half and have a really interesting grungy folio. So that could be fun too. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this little idea and that you'll experiment on your own. So have a great rest of your day. Now go make something. Bye.